All right, today we're diving into a real-life archaeological cold case. It's a mystery that's 4,500 years old, involving a pharaoh's statue that turned up hundreds of miles from home with a 1,000-year gap in its story. This is the incredible case of the Sphinx of Tel Hazor.
So let's start right with the evidence. What you're looking at are the front paws of an ancient Egyptian Sphinx. But here's the thing, they weren't found in some forgotten tomb in Egypt. Nope. Archaeologists dug these up in northern Israel, and believe me, that's just the first twist in this story.
Our story really kicks off in the summer of 2013 at a huge archaeological dig called Tel Hazor. Now, this place was once a massive, powerful city in the land of Canaan.
So you've got this team from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and they uncovered this fragment. It's made from a type of rock called gneiss, which is from Egypt. And just from the paws, they figured the whole Sphinx would have been about 1.5 meters long, weighing half a ton. But here's the crucial detail. They found it right at the entrance to the city palace, buried in a layer of ash and rubble from a massive fire that destroyed the city in the 13th century BCE.
Now, I really want you to understand how big of a deal this is. Finding a monumental royal Egyptian statue of this age and size here, in the ancient Levant, well, it's a first. It's completely unique, an absolute outlier, and that immediately made it one of the most significant finds in the history of the entire region.
So, imagine you're the archaeologist. You're holding a piece of something that by all accounts shouldn't even be there. The first question you've got to ask is, who did this belong to?
Well, lucky for them, the Sphinx came with its own name tag, carved right there in the stone between its paws. This was the key.
And right here, this is the first major break in the case. This hieroglyphic text gave the archaeologists the clue they needed to figure out who the original owner was.
So, part of the inscription included something called a cartouche. You see, back in ancient Egypt, if you were a pharaoh, your name got this special oval frame drawn around it. It was like the ultimate royal signature, a seal of approval that screamed, "This belongs to the king."
And the name inside that cartouche? Oh, it's a famous one. King Mycerinus. We're talking about the pharaoh from way back around 2500 BCE. You'd probably know him as the guy who built the third and smallest of the Great Pyramids at Giza.
The text also gave him a royal title, beloved of the souls of Heliopolis, and a classic blessing, given life eternally. Now, that mention of Heliopolis, an ancient religious center near modern Cairo, was a huge clue. It suggested the Sphinx was probably made for a temple there. But you see, identifying the owner didn't solve the mystery. It actually created a much bigger one.
Because trying to connect a pharaoh from 2500 BCE to a burned-down city in the 13th century BCE just created this massive chronological black hole. The timeline was completely out of whack.
I mean, just look at this. The Sphinx is carved way back in Egypt's Old Kingdom, around 2500 BCE, but it gets destroyed in Hazor over 1,200 years later. That gap is enormous. To give you some perspective, that's like finding a perfectly preserved statue of a Roman Caesar in the wreckage of a building from World War II. It just makes absolutely no sense.
So the investigators were staring at this giant question mark. How in the world did this half-ton statue travel over 400 miles from Egypt all the way to northern Israel? And why did it take more than a millennium to get there?
Now, the most obvious answer, that Mycerinus himself sent it as a gift, was ruled out almost immediately. Back in his day, there were just no records of any real relationship, let alone the trading of monumental gifts between Old Kingdom Egypt and this particular part of Canaan. So that theory was a non-starter.
Okay, so if it didn't travel when it was made, when did it? This leaves us with two main theories, and you could say two sets of prime suspects for who moved this very old statue.
On one hand, you have Theory A, which points the finger at a group called the Hyksos. These guys were actually from Canaan, but they took over and ruled northern Egypt for a while. We know for a fact they like to take older statues and basically put their own stamp on them. So it's plausible they grabbed this Sphinx and shipped it off to their powerful allies back in Hazor. Then there's Theory B, which most experts think is more likely. This suggests it was a royal gift from a much later Egyptian pharaoh during the New Kingdom. See, by then, Egypt was in charge of Canaan, and Hazor was the top dog in the region. So sending its king an antique statue of a legendary pyramid builder? Now that would have been a serious power move.
But the case doesn't end with its arrival. The final chapter of the Sphinx's story is written in pure violence. How did it end up smashed to pieces in a layer of ash and rubble?
Remember, they found it in that fiery destruction layer from the 13th century BCE. And it wasn't just broken from the fire or a collapsing building. No, the archaeologists are pretty sure this was a deliberate act. It was intentionally smashed, most likely by whoever conquered and burned the city.
You know, as Dr. Daphne Ben-Tor from the Israel Museum points out, this act of iconoclasm, of intentionally destroying symbols of a previous power, is a timeless human behavior. Smashing the Egyptian Sphinx was a huge statement for the conquerors of Hazor. It was their way of saying, the old regime is gone.
So when you put it all together, what's the big takeaway from this amazing archaeological cold case? Why does this one broken statue still matter so much thousands of years later?
Well, for starters, get this. It's the only Sphinx of King Mycerinus ever found. Anywhere. We haven't even found one in Egypt. It's also the only giant royal statue from Egypt's Old Kingdom ever discovered in the entire Levant. It's proof of just how incredibly important the city of Hazor was. And it paints this amazing, complicated picture of the relationship between Egypt and Canaan that spanned millennia.
So in the end, while we have some really good theories, we don't have definitive proof of how the Sphinx made its incredible journey. The file is closed, but the case isn't completely solved. And it really makes you wonder, if a statue of a pyramid builder could end up here after 1,000 years, what other unbelievable stories are still buried, just waiting to be discovered in the ruins of this great ancient city?